Hello, my friends, and welcome to Adobe Live. I'm your host, Kieran Lewis, a freelance graphic designer based in London. And on today's stream, we have designer, illustrator, author, and overall legend, Tony Harmer. Tony, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, Kieran, I am doing good. What a lovely intro. Thank you so much,
pleasure.
man. I hope you're doing well.
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm sorry. We're finally doing a live Adobe Live hosting. I'm super excited, dude, to show the world your work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's be good fun. I'm looking forward to it a lot. I'm waiting to get started,
Awesome.
Eager to get started. So
sweet. We will definitely get into it. And I can see everyone is coming thick and fast in the chat. Hello, my friends. If you're tuning on Behance, YouTube, as always, massive welcome. We've got Anika, Oliver, Angus, and Susan, and many, many more folks. So as always, any comments or questions you have in the chat for Tony whilst he's designing, please get in the chat, and also show some love, show some emojis. We want to know where you're tuned in from, which country. Let us know. We'd love to hear about it. And then just before we jump into Tony's flair and about who he is and what it's about, don't forget, my friends, to always subscribe to Adobe YouTube channel, because there you can catch the latest streams and participate in our community. You'll see the link below, so please do it, and I promise you your creative soul will appreciate it. So definitely get subscribing when you can. Tony, my man, that's enough from my part. Would you like to tell the audience about who you are and a bit about what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much. Well, I'm Tony Harmer, as you already know. I'm affectionately known, and have been for a number of years, as the design ninja. I used to work at Adobe. I used to look after the design segment for the UK. But before that, and indeed after that, I am an illustrator, I'm a designer, I'm an author, I'm a LinkedIn learning author with more than 50 courses under my belt there that I've produced. I've got around 1.9 something million learners actively learning with me at the moment on LinkedIn Learning. So awesome. Tons of stuff like that. I have not updated my Behance in quite a while, but here's a few things on here, the sort of typical nonsense I get up to. So this is something that was done in Adobe Draw, as it was at the time, really, and then move forward into Illustrator itself. This is one of the tables of contents for my Illustrator 2020 training. Awesome. I've actually got a massive one of those over on the studio wall over there. But this is how I do a table of contents, Kieran. This is it. There's no lists, no lists for me, and also because of my natural sort of quasi and anarchic behavior, you can see here it's start here or wherever you want.
I love it. There's no rules. The rule is, first rule of all, no rules, right?
Whatever's comfortable for you. A few other things. I did the infographic for 20 years of InDesign, so that was a few years, about 3-4 years ago. InDesign, 20 years old. I got, honestly, on half a sheet of A4 paper or letter paper, you could actually write down the information they gave me. I had to mine for everything else, and it was really hard. But essentially, right the way back to before it was a product, through all the box products, through into Creative Cloud, and all of that stuff. And again, I've just realized I've showed you two things in a game board fashion.
That shows your energy, though, right? I like your that fun charisma.
Yeah, I like doing wacky stuff. I mapped out how Creative Cloud libraries go together a few years ago, how they work between the apps, and of course, you and I both know what that looks like, right? It's our favorite mass transit system, right?
Course,
so that whole kind of thing there. That sort of stuff. I draw a lot still. This is something I did live with Gavin Campbell. I don't know if you know Gavin, but this was the Tiger for Year of the Tiger, which of course last year. And all this sort of stuff, vector stuff, which is what I'm known for mainly. So there you go. That's pretty much what I do. And I teach people to do all this crazy stuff.
That's awesome. And I think that's perfect for anyone who's kind of just starting out, and in the chat, if you're where you're viewing from, any questions, especially if you're just starting out in anything that would help if you're in education or anything like that. Tony's definitely your guy. So I feel like there'll be questions coming in thick and fast, and I can see, Tony, already in the chat, they've already picked up that obviously you're both from England. So we've got two Brits in the chat, which Carol's actually said, woo, 2 Brits. Smiley faced emoji. So yeah, it's definitely a Brit takeover today on Adobe Live. Yeah, so we're good for it. So yes.
Yeah, welcome to British Day on Adobe Live US. There will be subtitles.
Don't say exactly. Even more so if you talk fast like myself. But cool, man. Yeah, where should we jump into first? What's your you lead me?
Right, so we're going to be making a poster. Now I can actually show you what the poster looks like ahead of time, so you can get a rough idea of how that's going to be. So this is the thing we're going to build just here. If I just zoom out a tad on that so you can see it. So I've made something here that's going to get across a whole different bunch of techniques. Something that's bright and fun to do, and you're going to learn a whole, or the chat, and you don't. I'm not going to teach you much, Kieran, to be fair. But you know,
we can always learn, of course.
This is a good thing, actually. You can. But we're going to we're just going to build this thing out. Use a few different techniques in there, something fun. There's a thing in there from Adobe stock, but the good news is when I get to showing that actual thing, it's not going to cost you any dollars because we're going to be using Adobe stock from the free collection. So that's what we're going to do. That's it. And as soon as we're ready, I guess we could start now and get amongst it, I guess.
That sounds like a plan, and definitely jump into it. I can see we've got a few people who already know about you then, Tony, man. We've got the Design Ninja just kind of flowing in the chat a few times with like ninja with loads of A's. So yeah, I feel like you've definitely got a few folks who've seen your work.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, welcome wherever you are tuning in from. So yeah. Let's definitely get cracking.
Fantastic. Yeah, I don't see the chat just at the minute, so you know, kind of focusing.
I'll be your eyes. I can be your eyes.
Yeah, you be my eyes. That's the way we do it over in. Yeah, that's grand.
When it comes to emojis, I'm pretty stuck with trying to show that I might do it for interpretive dance, but that's a whole different stream in itself. So yeah, go for it.
Always a good one. Anyway, I've already jumped into InDesign. I don't have a document ready just yet, but that's what we're going to work on right now. So I am going to Command N, Control N if you're on Windows, of course, File New if you don't use shortcuts, because you know some people don't. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a standard size poster. So that's an 18 by 24 poster. That's what we're going to do. So you can see that my dialog here is set up for the measurement units that we use, but we're going to change that just by typing the unit in here. So for the width, I'm going to type 18 IN, like so. Okay, and then I'm going to tab through to the height field. You can see it converts for us. And here I'm going to type 24. And this time, just for giggles, I'm actually going to use the double smart quotes there. So just to show you that it does both things, both conversions for you. For columns, this is going to be a single column, although I am going to create a grid to help me balance the thing out, right? Grids and guides are great. Don't stick to, they're not a rule set. You don't have to stick everything in a box. This is a common misconception with grids, but we'll get to that soon enough. For the margins, because this isn't going to have anybody's paws on it, margins are the thing I consider most when I'm doing things like for magazines and so on.
Sure.
But for this, I'm going to zero this out because it's going to be a poster. And I'm going to add 3mm bleed around that, which I think is about 1/8 of an inch, something like that. Not entirely sure. I think it's about right, about 1/8 of an inch, but that's fairly standard for sheet-fed materials here. Now, whenever you create something like this, if you're likely to do it again, it's always a good idea to come up and click this button at the top here to save that as a document preset. And you'll notice if I use my document presets here, I've already done one for poster. So I'm not going to save it this time, but all you do is click that, give it a name. Poster's a good one, right? Okay, and then you're done from there. By the way, if you want to, you can actually preview the document as it's built there, right? Which is useful for some things, but here I don't think we need a preview. We'll accept the surprise as it arrives on the screen, which it does right now. Okay, so right to begin with then, I'm going to go ahead and add some guides. I'm just going to pop in another layer here just for a moment. So I've gone to my layers panel. Oh, and by the way, I'm using the Essentials Classic workspace. Like me,
old school. I like
it's
it.
classic.
You've gone old school. I do like that.
There we are. I've got my rulers showing, so I'm just going to hide those just for the moment. So Command R, Control R to do that. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the layout menu item and top level menu system, and I'm going to come down and choose create guides from here. Now this does have preview enabled already, so I'm going to bring in some rows. This has an 8:6 ratio to it, so I'm just going to dial in 8 rows just there, like so. The gutter, 5mm is just fine. It's not particularly important for this one because I'm not laying out blocks of text. And then for columns, I'm just going to add in 6 just there. And as I've kind of said already, this really is just a guide so I can get a sense of balance within the composition as I work on it. So that's the whole purpose, not for sticking things right into boxes. Fit the guides. Well, page and margins happen to be the same right now, so happy days. I'm just going to leave it at either of those things and hit OK. So I've now got my guides, but the reason I added a layer beforehand is that's a way I can quickly turn them on and off. And if I wanted to use a different system in conjunction with this without having lines all over the place, say like a rule of thirds grid, I could add that on a separate layer, and then I can switch between those things. So you get the best of both worlds. It's a good idea then for me to name that layer guide layout just there, like so. Done. And then we've got that for when we need it. I'm also going to lock it so I don't interfere with it, and then make the layer beneath active. Right then.
Just a quick one. Whilst that's quite a cool thing for anyone who's quite, especially new in, I guess in most platforms like Adobe or Photoshop, InDesign, where you've got layers, and the idea of just starting quite neat to begin with, where you said obviously you've got things layered, because sometimes it's quite easy to jump into it, right? And have everything in one layer, and then at the end you're like, oh crikey, how do I kind of get through and navigate through everything when you've kind of got everything nice and neat in your layers? So rule of thumb, guys, definitely when you get a chance, to name your layers, and just makes it much more easier, right? As you
and especially useful if somebody turns around to you and says, oh, by the way, we need to use this in After Effects. Yeah.
Yes.
So
where do I start now? Where's that time machine when you need it, right?
yeah, exactly right. And then you think, oh man, I wish I'd done that. There's so many different reasons to keep with that. Okay, I'm just going to drag out a text box just here at the moment, and I'm just going to type the word Adobe in upper and lower like so, and I'm going to select that text, so just double clicking on that word there because it's a single word. Now at the moment my paragraph options are showing in the control strip at the top, okay, but I want the character options. Now I know I can see them on this, it's quite a big screen that I'm using, so I can actually see the basic character options on the right hand side there, but let's pretend I can't just for now. Do you know the quick way to switch between these two things without clicking on the icons? There, Kieran, do you know that one?
Show me. I don't. Educate me, please. I generally don't. I me being clever. I actually don't know.
It's Command Option. That would be Control Alt if you're on Windows 7. Okay. And you can see how quickly you can switch between those two things. So that's kind of a useful one to remember. It's not my favorite one. My favorite one does exist in InDesign. My favorite of all shortcuts does exist there. Okay, but maybe we'll get to that a bit later on. So I'm going to change the. Well, I can tell you what it is actually, because it's undocumented. It's my favorite word. I know loads of undocumented shortcuts, and the reason this is undocumented is because it's ridiculously long. It's like crazy long. They do like on the web page there for the thing where you learn the shortcuts or whatever. It's in like a nice little matrix, nice little grid. This one will break it.
You've gone full Da Vinci Code, haven't you? Okay, I like
this one is, it's a really simple command, but what the command actually does, right? If I just click away, I'm just going to click away from that text box just for the moment. What the command actually does, here's the description for it. Shift application focus to first available input field in the control strip. How much fun does that sound?
You had me at control strip, I think. Really.
Right. Well, if we look at the control strip at the top there, right, we can see that the first available thing that I could type into currently says Minion Pro. Here's the shortcut, Command 6, and it immediately highlights that field. So if I wanted to type, as I do, Lato, because I'm going to use Lato black for this, right? Okay, I can just type it, hit return, and I've saved myself a whole bunch of time by doing it. Now, all right, that's not an entry-level kind of shortcut, really, but it's a fun one.
And it saves time. If I can see we've got Anika who's like, OMG, like I feel like there's been a few light bulb moments, including myself, just seeing that. And that's the beauty of these streams. You're going to see little tricks and tips here and there Write these guys down,
Exactly.
like little gems.
Yep. A little bit of kind of entry level learning, but of course, not everybody who's watching will be entry level. They'll want the little nuggets, but I'll try and sort of spread out the little nuggets across the stream. Anyway, so I've got that
Nice.
text like so. Now I don't want to mess around. This, first of all, it needs to be not text anyway for what I'm going to do with it on this particular occasion. In fact, I'll zoom in on that for you so it's easier to see. Okay, so I'm actually going to outline it to stop it from being text, because it's pretty tight there on the way it looks. I might just check with the kerning there, and what I'm going to do is, rather than using metrics, I'm going to use optical, because there's a fab little algorithm in there that's actually 9 times out of 10 remarkably good at sorting out that visual spacing, especially when you're using text at a large size. Works remarkably well. But anyway, that's now ready. What I'm going to do is I'm going to outline this. Now, the shortcut for that is Shift Command O. That would be Shift Control O on Windows, but I'm going to use the menu system here because not everyone can use the shortcuts. Okay, and then I'm going to, this is how often I do it. I'm actually
you forget after,
and I'm actually going to the wrong menus.
So it's is it object?
No. I'm going to use I thought it was object actually, but I'm not quite seeing it just there at the minute. This is how often I use it.
I'm exactly the same. Yeah.
Terrible. Really terrible, but anyway, that's a great start. That is, Tony. Well done. I'm giving myself.
No, you're good. And I think, friends, again, you're watching, you're thinking, that's, again, the more you do it, these little shortcuts will just come and literally within that design flow, right? And it becomes a bit more streamlined process. There we go.
I mean, the great news is as well is that shortcut is common with Illustrator. So if you're using both, then it's handy. And there are some that even work across all 3 of the design apps. So I'm just going to resize this out to kind of the size I want. I'm holding down Shift there to keep the proportions like that. And then just using, well, you can see there, I've got a guide that's showing me it's on the center of the page anyway. And just optically, that might not always be true. So I'm just having a quick look at that, but I think that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to copy this to my clipboard because I'm going to need two instances of it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap M, right, to draw a rectangle like so. And I'm just going to draw a rectangle like this. I'm kind of cutting into the crossbars of the capital A and the E just there. I'm also looking at it and thinking, would that flip over and carry all of the text above it? Well, it won't. So I'm going to switch to the selection tool. V is the quick way to do that. If we get time, Kieran, and you want a super nerdy fact, you can ask me why it's V for the selection tool.
I'm always up for a nerdy fact, Tony. Do you know what? Just for that moment, I'm going to make sure, even when I give you the last 10 minutes at the end of the stream, I'll add another 15
you want to know?
just so we get that in.
What V is. Anyway, right, I'm going to, so at the minute, this rectangle has no fill and a black stroke. Yeah. Okay. I want it to be the exact opposite. Yeah. Now there is a small arrow just over the two swatches in the toolbar just there, but Shift X, and again this works in Illustrator, does exactly the same thing. If you can use the keyboard, it's faster, but there it is. In fact, it even tells you when you hover over it. Okay, how to do it. Right, great. Nice. So I've got that. I've got the other word on my, or the other instance of this word on my clipboard. In fact, I'm just going to quickly check I have. Okay, then I'm going to get this rectangle. And I'm going to set the reference point. This is where that Command 6 thing could also work there. If I did Command 6, now the first available input field happens to be the X position. But if I use Shift Tab, it moves me back onto that grid. And if I use the arrow keys on my keyboard, you can see it's like playing Snake on an old Nokia.
Oh, we're going back now, Tony.
but I can move it. The thing is, I don't have to click there. I can just do it. And once you're fast at doing it, awesome. It happens to be in exactly the right place that I want. Okay, nice. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this flip vertical option here in the control strip. It is in the properties panel as well if you're using it that way. Okay, but I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key and click on that. So that gives me a copy. By holding down the Alt or Option key, it creates me a copy and it flips it. So what I need to do now is I need to select the text and one of those rectangles, like so. You can see that they're both selected just there. I then need another panel. I'm going to go to the window menu where all panels live. I'm going to come down to Object and Layout and choose PathFinder. So just in case you don't know what it is, the PathFinder is a way that you can build shapes from other shapes, sort of a combination of shapes, or by subtracting one shape from another, which is pretty much what I'm going to do here right now. I'm going to use these PathFinder commands, the second one in, right, which is called subtract, sometimes called minus something anyway, but it will take away the shape, the rectangle shape from the lettering underneath. So if I hit that, okay, you can now see, if I just move this out of the way, that it's punched that from, okay, that shape. I'll just undo that, Command Z, Control Z. And then I'm going to paste down in place, okay, the text. So it will paste down exactly where it was cut from. I'll use the edit menu for this one, okay, but there you go, paste in place. Shift Option Command Shift Alt Control V is the quick one. So any spare fingers you've got at that particular moment, smack them on the edge of the keyboard and use that. Okay, now the other thing is this, for the operation that I just used, this needs to be at the back really. So I'm going to right click on that. Okay, I'm going to choose Arrange and Send to Back, like so. Okay, now you can do that using Shift Command or Shift Control and the left and right brackets on your keyboard to move things up and down in the stack, but that's what I'm doing just there. And then shift clicking that rectangle. Okay, so that's just the two things I've got there. And again, I'm going to repeat that subtract command. And if I click away from it and just tap W to go into preview mode, who would know, that I'd done anything to it? It looks the same, which is great. Now at this point, did you say Annika's in the chat? Annika,
Yeah, she is indeed.
This is fantastic. Then she will be saying, Tony hasn't saved yet. Because she's like the queen of saves.
That's so funny you said that, because further up in the chat, that was actually came up, but I didn't mention it because you already saved it before she did it. So I was like, yeah, this dude's already on the ball, man.
Very good. Do you know, I've got, since Annika's been watching my live streams, my own live Illustrator live streams and streams that I'm on in Adobe UK, she's made me so much more aware of when I'm not.
Oh, yeah. I've got like an Anika doll above my computer just so I remember to save. Honestly, we appreciate you. We really do, because saving, my friends, we all forget. We all forget now and again to save, and that will be horrible for anyone. I'm sure we will experience that moment. So always save your file.
Oh yeah, you don't want that to happen. Even though InDesign's really good with crash recovery, it's you know, you still don't want to rely on that, right? You know, it's a good thing. And I'm going to drop this down onto my desktop. I've just called it ALUS, so Adobelive United States poster, and do that great stuff. So now I'm in a situation where I've saved. I'm going to select both of the things that I've got here, right? So that's both halves of the word Adobe, and I'm going to group them, Command G, Control G, or Object Group from the panel. Now, they're not in the positions that I actually want them to be in. So I'm going to move them as a group, first of all. Okay, so I'm going to come up and just bring this up towards the top, somewhere like that. Now, I'm just looking at the position within just these squares and having a look. I haven't gone exactly to the center because there was no smart guide that lit up and told me that, but I've gone quite close to it. I've gone more to the optical center, which is always slightly above the mathematical center of an object. Now I want to move the bottom half to further down the poster. I've just realized I've added 2 pages to this. But that's my fault for using the thing as you know. So I'm just going to get rid of one of those pages. That's just because it annoys me. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside the group. Now, I see people all the time. I used to analyze people's workflows when I worked at Adobe. And I used to see people all the time who would ungroup something like this, change it, and then regroup it. Totally unnecessary, right? You can work inside the group. I'm going to double click on the group, and you'll notice, because I double clicked on the bottom, that's now the thing that's selected. So I can go ahead and move that down the page. And the way I'm doing that, by the way, is I am using the arrow keys on my keyboard, the down arrow, and I'm holding down shift, which makes it move a heck of a lot faster. So I'm just coming to about here. I think that's going to be fine. Okay. And then I'm just going to click away. When I click back on that, I've still got my group. That's useful because geometrically, these things are no longer the same size, right? Because that side, left-hand side of the A starts much further over to the left than the top half does, and so on. So that makes it a different thing. But here, because I want this to be centered, this is kind of important that it's centered, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my alignment options, and I'm going to choose align to page. Okay, and then I'm going to hit horizontal align center. But because I did go to the trouble of using the smart guides in the first place, then that's
you might as well use it. Yeah,
might as well. Yeah, absolutely. But just in case I hadn't, always a nice thing if you want it centered like so. So I've got a group that I can transform as I need to. Now it's time for another rectangle. So what I'm going to do is tap M on my keyboard, because that's the bestest for drawing rectangles. And I'm going to start drawing. Let me try and get both things onto the screen a little bit. I'm going to start drawing at the bottom of the A, just here. Now, InDesign is actually super good at telling me when I'm aligned with content, right? That's a really cool thing that it does that. And the only thing that it does is it just adds a small arrow just to the side of the cursor so I can see it. That doesn't matter. It's not mission critical if this does happen to spill over the edge of the letters. It's of no particular consequence. So I'm quite happy if it does go a bit to the sides. I'm going to tap V to go back to my selection tool and bring this out a bit. I think I'm going to go to just a shade. So just so you know how I'm doing this at the moment, what I'm looking at and what I'm looking for is any one of these boxes on the left from the guides. I'm kind of visually dividing that up into 3 columns inside of it. And that, I think, is about a third of the way in. That's what I'm aiming for just there. And then I'm going to do the same on this side. And then once more, I'm going to choose that align to center just there. Actually, I can't believe it. I was bang on. It did not move at all.
That's the life of a design ninja, man. You just know. You don't...
Boom.
That's not even luck. That's skill in itself.
I'll put my hood up now. I look like a ninja.
Proper ninja.
Proper ninja.
That's cool. But what I like as well, actually, going back to what you were saying before, like I think that the guides wasn't necessarily something that it's governed that you have to use it, but it's nice that you're kind of reverting back to that is the foundation, and you're very much working outside that box anyway. No pun intended. But yeah, I think that worked really well.
That was good pun though.
All by myself. Just a quick one. We've got some good questions actually, which by my friends, ahead. Please keep them coming. And I'm holding them back so I can strategically drop them out throughout the stream so you guys can get the best out of Tony. So we've got the wonderful Liz who's with us today. Liz Mosley. Hi Liz. Welcome back.
Hey Liz.
And it's a good question actually, which is for yourself, but also for anyone else in the chat. If you could, Tony, only use one Adobe tool for the rest of your life, which tool would it be? That is a question, isn't it? What would you as well, Liz? Actually, let us know in the chat. Anyone else in the chat? What would your Adobe only rest of your life?
Oh, well, I mean, like Illustrator is my fave, but if that was the only tool, I mean, I can do vector work in Photoshop.
Yeah.
But I can't do much photo work in Illustrator.
True.
So I think if I was just going to have one Adobe product, it would have to be Photoshop. Because I can do vector work in there. Of course, it's not as mature as Illustrator is for doing vector work. But also I can do video work. I can make animations inside of Photoshop. Yeah, so it would have to be Photoshop.
Nice. Yeah. Did you mean
provided they bought
Liz,
3D back?
Did you go Flash going right back? I don't know if you meant actually like the actual tool or the program, but because like my brain straight away when she said tool, I thought like for example the pen tool or something like clipping mask, or which could be, I could be wrong. I guess for my one, it's InDesign, isn't it? I mean, I love books. I'm in that space. It's gonna have to be InDesign. So even what you're working on today it's musical to my eyes. It's awesome. Yeah, let us know. I can see we've got some people already started to throw theirs in the mix. We've got Yavi, which I hope I said that correctly. You said Fresco. Yes, I can see Fresco.
Yeah.
Carol said 3D in PS in Photoshop. And then we got Olivia who said I apologize. Oliver, completely opposite. Oliver who said Lightroom Classic. Yes.
Lightroom, that's Oliver Andrews, isn't it?
That is, you knew. I love
He's hazing me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they used to do 3D in Photoshop, but 3D in Photoshop doesn't really exist anymore. It's disappearing. But oh well. Nice. Anyway, Right, I've got
Nice.
this. They were good questions, though. I like that, and just and it's great to see everybody here. So I'm going to select the rectangle that I've just drawn. Now, again, I want to swap over the fill and stroke. So Shift X to do that. Ready for another set of quick keyboard shortcuts, Kieran?
Cool. I was born ready for this, dude.
There you go. Right.
Bring it on.
These work in Illustrator and in InDesign exactly the same way. So there's 3 potential fills you could have for an object, right? And that's a solid fill, which is what we have right now, a gradient fill, and no fill. And we've got 3 keys on our keyboard that are usually next to one another. Yeah. And they can change that fill. The only thing you have to notice, you have to look at your toolbox and see which of these 2 is in front. Right. So if it's the solid square in front, that means it's going to affect the fill. If it's the hollow square, it's going to affect the stroke of the selected object. And here are the keys. So you're not going to notice any change if I just use the first one, but it's the comma key that will give you a solid fill. The period key will give you a gradient fill, and the slash key will remove the fill completely. So there you go for solid,
nice,
gradient, none. So I'm going to go back to gradient because we've got no color in this yet, and I want some color. I'm a colorful person, I think. And what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to park PathFinder panel just over here with these other panels so that I can use them later on. Okay, so let's go ahead then and get our swatches, and I'm going to create a new gradient swatch. So I'm going to the panel flyout, which is the sort of hot dog menu at the top there. I'm going to click on that new gradient swatch, and we'll call this. Let's call this Kieran.
Oh,
we're going to call.
I'm immersive in your design.
Kieran. Have I spelled it correctly? I think you have. Yeah.
You have. Yeah. We've known each other now, Tony, for quite a while.
I know. But I always worry. Yeah, ask Liz. I've spelled Liz. I've spelled Liz's name. Well, not Liz. I mean, anyone can spell Liz. Pretty much.
But
anyway, I just added in an extra E just for giggles. But anyway, not like Liz Mosley, but but you know, Mosley. But anyway, right, I'm going to click on the first stop on the gradient ramp just here. And at the moment, although there's loads of different models you can use in here to generate your stop color, I'm actually going to push this all the way over to yellow. I'm then going to add in about 10 or 15% of, in fact, I kind of like it with 10. Let's try it with 15% of magenta. See, I like that. It's sort of an amber. It's about 15 degrees away from orange on the color wheel as it is right now. And I kind of like that. So I'm going to go with that one. Nice. I'm then going to click on the stop at the other end, and it switches me out to my swatches. Say that 3 times quickly. But anyway, I'm then going to just add in some pure raw magenta on that side. That's great. So now we've got that. If I hit OK, that's added to the swatches panel. If I wanted to make more swatches, then I just click add and carry on making more swatches. But this is good. I don't want to change the gradient around. So I want it to be sort of in a different orientation to the way it is at the moment. So I'm going to tap G on my keyboard. It gets me the gradient tool. And then I'm just going to draw this because this looks I love this color combination. It looks nice and warm.
A nice color, right? It's strong.
And actually, when you do it like that from end to end, it gets positively hot. So I'm just going to dial that back a bit by just going across. In fact, I might just go just a shade outside of the bottom there. That's cool. And a quick update save, because otherwise people will be saying that in the chat now.
You're giving me some summer vibes I'm getting already just from looking at this design. And we need that for January, right? So
yes, we do. Even though it's February.
It is February. That's clearly my mind's obviously. I'm in the past. Yes, you're right. Only by yesterday I'm in the past. Though.
Living in the past. That's terrible.
It's the first
That's
today,
terrible. Now, for everything else here, I've kind of set myself out to use just the swatches that are in the existing panel. So I'm not going to mix any particular colors here. I'm just going to use what I've got. Oh, apart from that yellow, I'm going to just double click on that because I'm not sure about. Oh no, I'll keep that one. I might make one more from that. In fact, I'm going to duplicate that swatch, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add my 15% magenta in there. So I'm using the keyboard to do that. There we go. So I've got that same swatch in there, which is nice. Right then, so I want some shapes with this. So first off, I'm going to tap L on my keyboard to draw an ellipse. So I'm going to draw something, and really I'm just going to eyeball this. I kind of want to break the frame a little bit. I don't want it to be right in, you know, on the edge or anywhere like that. I want it to just be creeping outside the frame. And then I'm going to tap the period key there to get my gradient on inside of that. I've also just noticed, looking at the toolbox, and in fact looking at the control strip at the top, another place you can see this has a black stroke. Dun dun dun.
Yeah,
I don't want that.
Slip through the cracks.
It's just, you know, I don't want that at all. So here's what I'm going to do. If you want to do the ninja keys stuff, right, you would first of all tap X, which brings the stroke to the front there in the toolbox. You would then hit the slash key, which of course is the short thing for none. Then you tap X, so you're back to fill land. There we are. Nice. I love that stuff.
You must also want to blitz through your workload, by the way. I can imagine just full of keys continuously in your everyday, you know,
process. I do work fairly fast. It has to be said.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I do work pretty quick, but you know, hey ho, it's people forget we're doing this for money, right? This is kind of,
and that's the life of a ninja. You never heard of a slow ninja, right? It's not a thing. If it was, then you have to change your day job, I think.
Exactly. I would. I think I would. Now, actually, I think I'm just going to bring forward the properties panel just for a moment. So this is, if you're just using the Essentials workspace, this is what you'll get. I think this is your favorite, isn't it? The Essentials one.
It is. Yes. I do love an Essentials though. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I actually, for some reason, I actually thought there was an option to switch the gradient type there, okay, inside of that panel, but maybe not. So I'll just close that up, but I'll keep it handy anyway. And I think what I'll do is I can go ahead. There's a couple of different ways I can change it. I think I'm just going to create a duplicate of that swatch, and then I'm going to double click on that to edit it. Let's call this Kieran Radial. Yeah.
Nice.
There we are, radial. So now we've got that. Now the gradient's going kind of the wrong way. I will go back to the properties panel here, I think, or do it this way. There are a couple of different ways to switch these ends around, but I think I'm just going to drag it just for fun and fun. There we go. Right, there we are. Don't know where those words came from, but anyway, moving on.
You're in your creative zen space. I love it. So they're going to keep coming in. Those words.
La La Land.
Yeah. Keep them coming, buddy.
And I'm just going to stretch that just so it's nice and warm towards the middle, but it's not sort of overpowering. The rest of it, let's have a couple more shapes. So I'm just going to Option drag. That would be Alt drag with my selection tool to create a copy just there. And this one, I'm going to fill that with a color. I'm actually thinking possibly magenta. In my original design, I had magenta. Nice. I'm going to go more or less towards that intersection there. Again, I'm not sticking to the grid at all. You can use your arrow keys to shunt things around. Remember, hold down shift if you want things to move a little bit quicker. Then I'd like a triangle. And do you know how I'm going to make that triangle?
Ooh,
because there is, yeah, well, there is like a polygon tool. I could do a triangle with a polygon tool. No. But here's one of the things I love about InDesign. InDesign's really cool with you changing your mind. Yeah. If you say to InDesign, oh, I don't want a circle, I want a triangle, InDesign will go, okay, let's make it a triangle. If you go to the PathFinder, you've actually got this whole convert shape thing going on just here. I could just click that, boom, triangle. Yes. That's how lazy I am, Kieran.
But you know what? I feel like if maybe InDesign should be just a way of life, right? The idea of just being comfortable with changing direction at the last minute. It's like, yeah, because I know I'm a bit of a, if you change last minute, my brain goes a bit wired, but I'm down for it, man. I'm always down for a last minute change.
I ought to mention, by the way, that I've got a book in progress called the InDesign Cookbook, which is a series of recipes. It's already been previewed at Max. So Max on the XM Pi stand, they bought a special version, short version of the book just there and used it. So I've got all of these little things, and I deal with ingredients and recipes to make all these things together. So that will be later on this year and should be fun. Now, here's the thing, right? Just getting back to the main sort of if this was a real job kind of thing. And I'm going to zoom in as much as I can here so you can see it. the red line outside of the page there, that represents the edge of the bleed, just in case you don't know what that is. And bleed is necessary when you have anything that meets the edge of the page, because when all of your lovely pages are printed, they go into a guillotine, and the guillotine presses them down, right, and then slices them off like that. Now, if you've ever had a stack of paper, you'll know that when you press it down, the paper shifts either outwards or inwards or both. Yeah. And so if you didn't have that there, you'd end up with some pages that just had no color at all on the edges. So this is just a way of ensuring as much as is possible, and in fact perfectly so, that stays there. So I've made sure I've moved that shape outside to the edge of the bleed. That's really, really important. Okay, so we've got that. I think I'm going to option drag a copy of that and make a bigger one. I'm also just hovering over the corners and rotating that around, also holding shift, which locks the rotation in. Let's take this down and kind of, now at the moment I'm dividing visually, I'm dividing the 4 squares there, or the 2 squares really in horizontal. I'm dividing those up, and so I'm moving this in relation to those, and I'm kind of aiming for about a quarter in on this one on the side, which is, of course, is getting me to a quarter that side, but not perfectly so. Back to the swatches then. We'll give this a color. Let's try my sort of amberish yellow. Let's try the bright yellow. Ooh, we're going bright yellow. Suddenly it's 1980.
You're bringing it back. You're bringing it back, Tony.
It's
I'm down
coming back. And
we're
doing it now. It's coming back.
We've got some great questions, which again, I was going to sort of strategic. Please get them coming.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll start throwing them out now and again. So we've got one from Alexio, which I'm saying it correctly, on YouTube, who said, "Is there a significant difference between InDesign and Photoshop?" Which there is, but how would you say your take on that would be for anyone who's quite new to it?
Yeah, so InDesign is designed as a layout program. So normally you bring in the other things. If you think of it like so the analogy I often use for the two things, it'd be Photoshop is like an instrument, whereas InDesign is like an orchestra. This is where you bring all of those instruments together, or the output from Photoshop or instruments. And this is where you bring them all together and you do it. There are some operations just to save you switching applications. And that comes from the days where there wasn't that much memory around. There are ways that you can work within this application. So InDesign has little bits of Photoshop built into it, as does Illustrator. But it's not the other way. The same isn't the other way around, right? So there's nothing from InDesign built into Photoshop. There is a little bit of Illustrator in there, but there's nothing from that. So this is for bringing it all together. Photoshop is basically for creating, creating the assets that you would use just there. Nice. Is that
nicely
kind of?
Yeah, nicely explained. Hopefully, excuse me, Alex, if you're quite new to, the Adobe programs, I mean, that's a great question, because I mean, at first glance, it can be quite daunting, right? Because there's a lot of programs, a lot of things to learn. But a bit like anything really in life, the more you kind of practice it, learn it, and the beauty as well of these kind of streams is that you're watching professionals like Tony, designing it live and seeing their kind of workflow and seeing how they actually use this particular program. So you're in a great place for trying to learn about each of the programs. But even after we're done and dusted, always definitely watch more streams, because that's how you can sharpen your skills on each of these programs. So it's a great question, Alexio, and please keep them coming, my friends.
Yes, that is cool. Do you know what? I mean, I know my intention at the end is to have the text reversed out, so basically in white and a black background, but I'm actually really liking this one.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like creeping around, isn't it, slightly?
I know, it's got something going on now that I wasn't, I designed the other one with a black background, and
I love when it happens though, when you're designing, like your brain just. Do you find that when you're doing, even with client stuff, you're doing options, and then I don't know if you're like me, which I don't know if it's the right way of doing it, but I have one idea, for example, of a design, and then halfway through that design, I have another idea, and I almost have to stop midway, and my brain needs to just needs to put it out there, projectile, right? And then at the end, you'll bring it all together and neaten it and finine it. But that's it. At the early stage.
Yeah. That's a branching behavior. That is, I do exactly the same thing. Right, I'm going to make a little bit of an adjustment to the layout just here. So this isn't quite going deep enough into the page for me. So I'm just going to double click on that group. Remember, the one that's made of the two halves of the letters. And I'm basically just going to bring that down to about there. I kind of like that there. And just resize this just a shade. And then I'm going to just nudge these around. Just that one's fine where it is. This one, actually, that one was kind of okay where it was, maybe just down a shade as well. So it's close to, but not exactly on a line with the shape opposite. So I'm building some sort of hierarchy in there, okay, and relationship between those shapes, but it's not perfect. That's the thing. The best things in life quite often aren't. So there we go.
Very true.
Right.
Very true.
Quick save. Now, a tool that doesn't get used enough, to my mind, inside of InDesign is the pencil tool. You can draw with the pencil tool in InDesign. Now, the shortcut for that, if you want to know that shortcuts for tools, right, let's get nerdy for a minute. Shortcuts for tools are called by engineers accelerators, right? They're a way of getting you there more quickly. And of course, it makes sense to learn those things if you're, you know, if you're working with them all the time. Yeah. Otherwise, if you just have to click on it, then just click on it.
Do you know what I love how you went into the screen like it was a secret between myself and you and our friends.
Yeah,
like,
it was like
I feel like we were in that moment there for a second. When you're like,
we're in a moment. Well, here it is. It's really simple. It's N. Doof. There you go. And you've got the pencil tool. Now, if you were working in Illustrator, you could simply hit return and you would get a dialogue. However, if you do that in InDesign, it does nothing. Yeah. So what you need to do is go to the toolbox and double click on it to access, as they call it's the options, but they call them preferences here. Tomato, tomato, different thing, same thing, different word, same thing. So the controls that you've got here are fidelity, how closely it tracks what you're doing. Now, if you're drawing if you're using a mouse as your main input device, I don't recommend trying anything super complex or big with that, because it's not good for your wrist and your fingers, and you'll pay for it later on. Trust me. So if you're using a graphics tablet, or if you're using a director screen, I'm using a director screen here at the moment, and a trackpad, those things, then maybe you can get away with with the tablet, you can get away with a whole lot more, or a director screen, you can draw, you know, whatever you like pretty much with that. Okay, but that's how closely it will follow you. I'm just going to leave that at 6 pixels. Now, smoothness is how much it will optimize the path for you. And for this particular one, I think I'm going to let it go sort of 3/4 of the way. We'll see how that works out. Okay, 75% is what I've gone for. So it's doing a lot of smoothing for me. I'm going to keep the path selected. I'm going to tell you why that is momentarily. And edit selected paths is turned on. Now, there is also, it's not hidden in Illustrator, but it is hidden in InDesign. There's a way you can access another tool. So I'm just going to hit OK. And just before I draw anything, I'm just going to long press on that tool. And you can see there's a tool here called the Smooth tool. Now, InDesign has lots and lots of little secrets, which is why David Blattner and Anne-Marie Concepcion have a very successful podcast called InDesign Secrets, because there are so many secrets. Okay, but they're all fun, good ones, which is great. There's no dark secrets in InDesign, all just good, fun, useful ones. Anyway, right, let me show you how that works. Now, I'm going to draw direct to screen here. I want something across this that is a bit more organic. So I'm going to start drawing from the outside, just around here, and I'm just going to kind of go with a shape like so. So I'm just drawing this across. I'm going to go right to the way on the other side. I'm going to swing in, just creating like a meta blob. That kind of thing. That's an actual thing.
And it's nice because, again, everything's it's obviously shaped, so it's quite hard edge, no? So this one feels a bit more fluid. Yeah. Like
now, I can tell you straight away, Kieran, that's too much smoothing.
That's it. You've oversmoothed yourself.
I've oversmoothed, man.
There we go. That's going to be a meme. Yeah. Okay.
Back down to 25%. Right, I'm just going to draw something very quickly and see what the level of smoothing is like. Yeah, that's much closer.
Oh, nice. That was an amazing blob.
Yeah. Anyway, right, so let's go ahead and draw this. That was way, way, way too much smoothing. Oh, man, I released at the wrong point there, so let's try again. I'm just chuckling away to myself. The screen's bouncing all over the shop. I'm just going to go out here, around, bring that in, just trying to create something that's kind of nice. Now, when I get to the point at which I started, the cursor feedback actually shows me that it's going to create me a single object. I'm still not sure about that being too smooth, but I can edit it. Now, before I do edit it, I'm actually going to bring that smoothness thing right the way down to 15% because it's super, super generous. That is. So the reason it keeps the path selected is that you can overdraw and change its direction. All you have to do is start drawing on the path and finish drawing on the path, and it will redraw your path. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go to the, can you see pretty much where I am? So if we go from the O at the top of Adobe and downwards, you'll see there's a point just here. I'm just going to start drawing there. I'm going to draw out like so, and then down and do that. And you can see it's now modified the shape.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm still working on that. It's not smoothing it so much to the same degree. I'm going to come down here. I want to change that like so. So I'm just going to go right the way around there. Now, I didn't finish on a path, so that's what happens if you don't finish on a path. So we'll try that again. Just along here like so, and then just out and finish on that path just there. I'll try from the bottom up because I'm clearly not being very successful at doing that.
And whilst you're doing it, just a quick reminder to our lovely friends. I mean, we're over an hour, pretty much just under an hour, which is kind of gone crazy. But if you have just kind of, you know, popped your heads in and hopefully you're going to stay. Welcome, of course, if you're on YouTube or Behance, you know, massive, massive welcome. And today we have our friend, designer, author, illustrator, and design ninja himself, Tony Harmer. And you're seeing him right now.
Yay.
In InDesign, working on a unique poster, experimenting with type and colors. So any questions you guys might have, please get them in the chat, and welcome if you have just joined us.
Cool. Now I'm not super satisfied with that shape right now, but it's getting to where I want it to be. So there we go, something like that. Now the smoothing thing, if you've got stuff where it's not smooth, if you hold, this is the bit that I mentioned that isn't in InDesign but is in Illustrator in that panel. If you hold down the Option key, it toggles you to the smooth tool. You can then brush across your path, and you'll notice that some of the points are disappearing and they're moving along the path, okay, to be smoother. Basically, that's the way to do it. So that's a quick way to get hold of the smooth tool.
Nice.
Now, I'm a bit of a tidy freak, I've got to be honest. So I'm going to just tidy a few things up. First thing I'm going to tidy is the edges here at the bleed. A few different ways I can do that, but here's the quickest way to do it. I'm just going to get the rectangle tool. I'm going to draw a couple of rectangles like so. And this time I'm just meeting the edges of that bleed. I'm then going to select one of those rectangles and that path. Go back to my PathFinder. If it's not, I've just added mine here earlier, but if you're catching up and you didn't see me bring in this panel, it's in the window menu, object and layout. And then I'm just going to punch that out from there. So that's tidy. Kind of happy with that. I'm not going to drag because I know there's a triangle hanging around underneath there. Okay, that I don't want to destroy. There we go. Tidy. The only other thing I want to do is get rid of the black stroke around this. So I am going to use the same thing I did earlier. X to bring the stroke to the front, slash to remove it, X to take me back to the fill.
Nice.
Then I can go ahead and change this color. Earlier we looked at the stacking order. We can change, I can send the stacking, this backwards in the stacking order by just holding down Command, that would be Control on Windows, and tapping the left bracket. That's the square bracket on my keyboard. I can also use the other square bracket to go up and down. So I've got those two things there. They're neighboring keys, move it up and down. But if this was a very, very complex layout, I probably wouldn't want to keep doing that because I began like to move it back. Sometimes you want to go arrange and then center back and then bring it forward. But there's another way. If we go to the layers panel, let's unravel the mystery of the layers panel. I am just going to hit this disclosure triangle to the side because around, can't even remember now how long ago it was. I think it was about 2010, I think, something like that. The layers system in Illustrator is so good. They modified InDesign to have the same system for layers. Now, I can see that this path here, by the way, if you want to name these things, you can, right? This path is selected. And the way I know that is because I can see this region here, just to the right. It's called the proxy region, is its engineering name. That tells me that that's what's selected. In fact, you can select other things. You can see that as I move around, I'm selecting things here, okay, just by clicking in that proxy region. But I'm going to go back to that path and select it. And I'm going to drag that down to just above the rectangle, like so. And suddenly, it's exactly where I want it to be. But it makes it so much easier to do. That is super, super bright. I love it.
You made a really cool point as well, actually, about that idea of the intuitiveness, right, between the programs. Because I guess if you're very much new to all these Adobe programs, you'll start to realize there's so much similarities with certain tools anyway. And that makes it so that you don't feel like you're kind of starting back to square one if you're in a brand new program, right? Because you know some of the tools. But again, just practicing. So it's cool to sort of see the two together.
Now, what I want now, Kieran, some diamonds, man. I need some diamonds.
However, diamonds in there, buddy. Go on.
Well, there isn't a tool for drawing diamonds as such in InDesign. If anybody from the InDesign team is watching, and I know you are, right? Fix this.
Where's my diamonds at?
Where are my diamonds? I want my diamonds, or at least allow me to make a square and squish it, which isn't what it allows me to do. Right, so just as before, you saw me do this before, right? What I've done is I'm going to change the reference point. I'm actually using my crazy ninja shortcuts to go there and just change that to where I want it to be. So basically on the bottom edge, you can see the reference point just there at the bottom edge. I'm then going to option click the flip vertical. Yeah, that gives me a copy like so. I'm going to select both of those. This time, this could have been called the PathFinder episode. Right, this time I'm going to do
the next session. Who knows?
How many times is Tony going to use the PathFinder today? Well, it's a lot. So I'm just going to bring this out. I'm just looking. Oh, that's pretty much exactly what I wanted. So,
love that.
I am going to select this diamond. I'm not entirely certain about where it is right now, but I'm going to go with it. I want to create me some copies. So I am going to go to the edit menu and I'm going to come down to step and repeat. For so many people, you know, this is kind of news that this panel exists. Preview is turned on. For the vertical field, and by the way, you can make any field active by clicking on the word associated with it in InDesign. That's how it works in InDesign. I'm going to 0, okay, for vertical. Horizontally, it should be taking on the size of that shape. I'm not entirely certain that it is, you know, but it should do. I'm then going to increase the count here. Okay, so it's a negative value anyway, so it's going to change it negatively. So I want the 3 anyway. That's kind of good, but I want to do it so it's exactly the same width, so they're all touching at that point. If I look up a bit, okay, at the control strip or options bar, if you want to call it that, if you come from Photoshop world, you can see that the width here is 59.133 millimeters. So all I'm going to do is change this value to 59.133. I'm going to hit the tab key. Boom, there they are. Nice. They're applied like so. So I've got those copies really quickly. That's super handy. Then I can go ahead and position those how I want them. So I'm just going to select all 3. I kind of like where they are vertically. So I'm going to keep them where they are vertically, but I want to move them out a bit more. Now I'm looking at them in relation to that circle above. That's where I'm actually looking. Kind of think I like it. I'm nudging it with the arrow keys. Yeah, kind of think I like it if it's pointing towards the circle. Yeah, I'm going to change my mind about the vertical bit because I want to add in. I'm going to add in 2 more diamonds.
You want more diamonds, Tony? I thought 3 was
more
enough.
Always more diamonds. Always more diamonds.
We've actually just on that topic. We've got a nice little pun here from Gareth. He said, "He's a diamond geezer, Tony." There we go.
But you know, I can almost guess who that is. In fact, hang on a minute. I'm just channeling through Adobelive. Hang on. I'm starting to see something.
This is weird if you do
it's Gareth Williams.
It is. Did I say Gareth Williams at the beginning? I feel like I said Gareth.
No,
I
you just
didn't,
say Gareth.
Okay, I was wondering.
Just definitely just say.
That's you being super crafty as a ninja. I get it. Yeah, you're good, man. That was Gareth Williams. Well done.
Gareth. See, the thing is, I mean, I've got my own little lovely community for my Draw This in Illustrator streams that go out on Tuesdays. And you kind of recognize people by their puns. So I'm just going to bring these in. The smart guides are actually helping me there because the intersection of the shapes is the center of the shape I'm dragging and also the top. So there are nice and easy to align that. This one here, this is going to be sort of an outlier, I think. Maybe actually, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and use that one here and just change the color of that to blue. Now we need something else in there, you know. But first of all, while I'm thinking about that something else, I know what it is really. I'm going to select all 4 of those diamonds, hit the period key. So I've got my gradient and I'll just change this back to original Kieran. Yeah, not
the original Kieran, not the new Kieran.
No,
and for anyone who's just coming in and thinking, what are they talking about? He's layered something, by the way, called Kieran. It's not like a weird tool called a Kieran tool.
There not yet. There isn't a Kieran tool yet. So all I'm doing here, by the way, to access selection quickly is I'm just holding down my system key, which on a Mac is Command, on Windows is Control. And I'm then just releasing that and using the gradient tool just to mix this up a little bit and make it so it's not so super regular across those. Just aiming for something I like that. Let's do that over here also. I kind of want that to end up more sort of amber on the outside, so I'm going to go way across like that. That was too far. There we go. Yeah, that's kind of getting there. I think I'm gonna have to start and go just to that. That's it. That's pretty much what I want. Groovy. Right, I'm just gonna say groovy. I'm gonna save
keeping
that,
that
sort
of
so oh no, man, I'm lost in powers all of a sudden.
Is that a Brit pun, Tony? I do believe it is a Brit pun.
That is a Brit pun. Absolutely a Brit pun. Now I've got that kind of set there. I'm just going to select all of those. Now I've selected the rectangle behind, so I'm just going to shift click that just to make sure I've got all of those. In fact, it's a good idea to group that maybe. No, I'll leave it just for now. There we go. So my alignment's gone a tad out of the window there, but that's fine. I can also go back to my layers panel. I want that to just be poking underneath that blue shape. I was
just thinking that kind of almost feels like there's depth to it, which is quite nice. I love when that happens.
Yeah. So we'll bring that down so it's just there. Oh, I've just put one of them down. That's super clever. That is. Actually, that's all that it needs to be, I think, in there. That's curious. Where's my path at? My path is right there. That should be. I've moved the wrong one. That's what I've done there, Kieran.
Oh, should have named it. Maybe
I should. Well, you know, there are reasons that you would name things in inside of InDesign, but that's for another day. Okay, then. So I've got those selected. Now I need something else that I'm perhaps not going to build in InDesign, but fortunately, I know somewhere that I can get it from. So. I have been, so if you are replicating this post to yourself, either now live or you're doing it later on watching on demand, and you want to create exactly what I'm doing here, then you can, right? Without costing yourself anything, because Adobe Stock has a free collection. You can search for things that are free on Adobe Stock. So I've gone free as my main filter here, and I've searched on hand, and earlier on, I just chose to license this one. You can also confirm that they're free because when you hover over them, it says free.
There's no hidden charge, just drops at your door.
No hidden charge, absolutely free. So awesome. I've got this one here. This is what I want to use for that. So I'm going to go back to InDesign and then I'm going to place that. So to bring that in, I'm going to use Command D. That would be Control D or File Place here. Let me just go to the folder where I think this is hiding. So there should be, there it is, just there. So I'm going to bring that in and then going to click and drag to get that to, I don't know, about that big is fine. There we are, no watermark or any of that stuff. Nice. I can use that to my heart's content, but I don't want to use it as it is. I want it to be sort of a more interesting shape. So I'm going to right click on it. Now you can see here, I have an extract from image option. And I'm going to say, make me a shape from this. So I'm going to do shapes. It's going to open up my Creative Cloud libraries. Okay, you can see an earlier one I did just there. That's hilarious. It's going to open up my Creative Cloud libraries, and this is it. I can actually choose how much I want to be in here. So if I just kind of dial this up, you can see I'm getting a lot more in there. I love the little bit of texture I'm getting just there. I can get it to smooth on save, so it'll kind of, you know, smooth a few things out. I don't see that as being a problem. It takes fractionally longer. Okay, but I'm just going to say, yeah, that is good. Save that to my Creative Cloud library. So it'll drop that into my CC library, which means if you were working with me on this and I was sharing this library with you, Kieran, you could use exactly that thing. And of course, there are other things I can get from it. So I can get color themes, which are really, really useful, right? And if there were type inside it, I can extract type or find out what typeface is being used there. And I'm going to close that. Let's bring that in. Suddenly, this is going to get a lot more dynamic now. So I'm going to just drag this out. I don't need this one anymore. And I kind of think I'm just going to rock this around like so. Now I'm going to have to make it slightly larger because remember, it's got to extend into the bleed. However, thinking about it, it doesn't have to extend that far because the back of this is eventually going to be all black on there. So it's going to have an entirely black background. Now, to resize it, I can either hold down Command and Shift to keep it proportional, or Control Shift if you're on Windows, or you can just tap E, which gets you the free transform tool. All you need to then do is hold down the Shift key, and then you can resize that. So I'm kind of going, so there's some sort of relationship between that, okay, and that red circle just there, or that magenta circle. Because I think there's a nice thing going on there with those two things, and it's almost like that sort of creation of Adam thing, you know, that famous painting.
I get
that
the
finger doing that whole thing. I
is it basically the finger and the blob, just like kind of like just having a connection? I love that.
Or basketball, whichever way.
I'm getting like flubber vibes, but anyway, that's a whole different stream.
Oh, right, okay, cool. So we've got those things. That's working out kind of good right now. Sort of thinking this needs a bit more texture. And the areas here, so what I'm going to do is this one here, I'm just going to lock this. So I've selected it. Now I could lock it inside the layers panel where it's selected. I could just click there. But also if you want to do it, well, look, you can also do it with a right click, thinking about it. Lock is just there. But Command L will lock the thing. And you can tell that it's locked because it gives you a little padlock icon at the top. Nice. Still sweet look. Oh, padlock. And you can click that padlock again and it will unlock. Amazing. It's like magic. They really, really thought this one out. Okay, so I'm going to
nice.
I'm going to select that blue diamond, and I am going to select this blue shape. And hey, what? Here's newsflash. Tony's using PathFinder again. Right, so I'm going to just join those two things together. Right, so they now become a compound path. Now the stacking order has changed somewhat because they've become a new object. So they've floated pretty much to the front. So I need to very quickly, and I'm just going to grab some of these things by shift clicking just there. I'm just going to use my keyboard shortcut to get them to the front. In fact, I'm going to go actually with the layers with this one. So I actually want one of these circles. You can also, by the way, click on something. If you know there's something behind it, you can actually hold down the Command key and you can drill down to get the next object underneath it. So if I do that here, you can see I've got the triangle. That would be Control, of course, on Windows. So I can bring that one to the front. However, I know that nearby there, somewhere in that area, I'm just going to look for anything that says circle. There it is. That's the item I'm after. Bring that to the front. Right then. Texture would be nice in here right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop us across into Photoshop just for a moment. So, what happened there? Still got you?
I'm still here.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. I thought when you went, for a minute, I thought it disappeared somewhere else.
Oh, no. You're good for it. We're still there.
Oh, man, Photoshop's not running. Why is Photoshop not running? I thought it was running earlier. That's kind of interesting. Something strange gone on just there.
Let's go. And whilst that's loading
Right.
up, actually, very quick, I was going to say we've got some people who's already said some great comments as well. They said, you know, the idea of playing with patterns. You can spend hours, right, sort of working on this kind of
Yeah.
idea of color. So yeah, I can see Sardines mentioned that too. Sardine, what did I say? I'm so sorry. It's Sardine. Sardine. What is in my
Sandrine.
mind? Sandrine. Oh, my
Sandrine.
eyes. I need to
Hello,
get them sorted out.
Sandrine.
I apologize. But
It's
yeah.
all good, man.
So
It's
yeah, go for
yes,
it.
you know, end of the day, it's good. Right. So here is a texture. Now, full disclosure here, I artificially generated this particular texture, but you could scan or acquire with your phone pretty much anything and turn it into a texture. So the minute this is just a PNG, okay, and it's kind of, you know, it's very magenta on a white background just there. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this to a black and white image to start off with. So I'm going to use one of the adjustments here, the black and white adjustment, the clue's in the name, just there to adjust this, because this is just too gray otherwise. And so it's magentas that I'm using there. So I'm just going to pull this magenta slider across. You don't have to do this on every image, by the way. It just happens to be this one because it's magenta, and magenta becomes sort of a mid-gray just there. There we go. That's about as dark as that's ever going to get, which is perfect. I'm actually going to apply that transformation using a shortcut. Command E, which brings that down. Okay. So now I've got this in black and white, but although it's not really black and white just yet, it's still an RGB document. So I'm going to go to the image menu. I'm going to come down to mode, and I'm going to choose grayscale. That's the first step. I'm going to discard that color information, but that's still not what I want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a 1-bit TIFF out of this. So I'm going to go back to image. I'm going to change the mode to bitmap. Now, there are various options just here. This tells me this is 72 ppi image, but it's going to output me at 300 ppi just here. And there's various different ways. It will depend entirely on what you're scanning. I often scan scrunched up paper or photographing scrunched up paper, whatever image you're using. Just play with this and it will show you a different result. So you can learn which way is the best to go. I'm going to hit OK. And this is it. I've now got this as a bitmap, right? I'm just going to confirm that I did actually do that. There we go, bitmap just there. So this is very simple because it's just pixels on or pixels off. And I'm going to save this now. So I'm going to do file save as, okay, and I'm going to drop this into this particular folder, but as a TIFF file. Okay, so .tiff. It tells me stipple TIFF already exists in there because I made one earlier for the poster that you saw there. You don't need to worry about any of these things, Lempel, Zib, Welsh compression or zip compression or any of that stuff. I'm just going to hit OK, and that's it. We have the stippled TIFF just there.
Nice.
Right, I'm going to go back to InDesign. So to place this image, I need a frame. Now, there are no frames present, but I want to make one out of something. So I'm going to select the blue shape that I made here. Let me just change the color of it for a moment so you can see it. There you go. Because remember, I included that diamond in it. I'm then going to right click on that. I'm going to come down to content. At the moment, it's unassigned because it's just a shape. I'm going to change it to graphic. And if I change the color again here, you'll notice that it's got the diagonal lines that indicate it is indeed a frame. I'm then going to place that file. So Command D to place. I'm going to choose stippled.tiff just here. Okay, I'm going to hit open, and that gets placed inside of that. Now the content grabber, that's this sort of donut thing here. I can click on that. That gives me access to the actual content. And because I'm using a trackpad, I can very quickly scroll in and out. Okay, to change the size of that in there. I just want to bring it more in. I'm just going to use these controls here and just bring that more in so it's, pardon me, more towards the actual bleed. So what's the exciting thing then about a 1-bit TIFF? Well, in InDesign, you can recolor them. So if I go here and choose a different color, you can see that I can do all of this good stuff and bad stuff, evidently. Yeah. Just by changing that. I'm not going out to Photoshop to change an image, but I'm introducing texture. Now, I could even tint that even though it's paper, it can still be tinted just there. So I could bring that down maybe, or I should be able to tint it. Yeah. Maybe not then. Okay, fine. I'll use another color. I'll use yellow and I'll tint that. Of course, you can't tint paper, Tony. You should know that. Right, there we go. There we go. I'm going to bring that down like so. So there you go. 16% tint of yellow on there. Pretty good. If I tap W on the keyboard, so we get a preview of where we are without all of the distractions. Good. Yeah, I think that's working. So this is for Adobelive, of course. So I'm going to need the word live right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this off artboard here, off page here, and I'm going to type the word live in big. And again, Command 6 to go to that first field, LAT, that gives me Lato Black. Actually, I think I'll change this to Lato Heavy. Just there, nice. I'm going to tab through here. I'm going to make this 100 points big, boof, like that. There we go. Nice. Again, I actually want this to be outlines for this. It's not desperately necessary for me to do this, apart from one thing that I'm going to show you in a moment. So Shift Command O or Shift Control O if you're on Windows, and let's kind of get this onto the page now and start looking at it. Now I want it to run down the edge of the page. So I'm actually going to take it to the edge of the page like so. However, remember what I said about how paper gets trimmed when it's printed. Of course, if you're working in digital, then you can just do whatever. Yeah, because it won't really matter, right? But if you are working with print, then these are the things that you kind of do need to know to save yourself a lot of embarrassment and whatever, although any decent printer should tell you. So I actually need some of the color of this to extend off the page. And because I've outlined this, yeah, I can do it as a shape. There are ways that you can do it if you've got actual live text there that needs to remain live. But for now, we're just going to do it this way. I'm going to switch to the direct selection tool. That's A on your keyboard. And I'm going to drag across the 2 points on the left. Now, here it's pretty easy because they're straight. Yeah, there's, you know, if it's a curve, that's slightly more problematic, requires a bit more work. Yeah, and then I'm just going to use my right arrow key here and just dab that across until I meet the bleed or exceed the bleed. Doesn't really matter, but as it happens, I've met the bleed. Nice. And now I know that even if that page moves in as it's being cut, it's still going to print the way I want it to look. Good. Right. So this is going to be in paper, at least to start off with here. And I want some more copies of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that step and repeat command again because it's super useful. Alt Command U, if I remember correctly, for that key. In fact, I'm going to have to look now.
All right. And just while you're doing that, I would be the world's worst host if I didn't mention we have about maybe 8 minutes, and then we'll do like, and this is definitely not your first rodeo, so I know you're in ball when it comes to timing, but we'll do maybe like 8 minutes, and then we'll do like a nice little wrap up so we can.
Yes, that is fine. Awesome. That is good. Right, so I'm going to make 3 copies here, and then I'm just going to mess with the offset here. I just clicked in that field, and I'm just using my arrow key to kind of space them out. I think that looks pretty good where it is just there. Excellent. Then I'm just going to work my way through these. So this one at the bottom, that's going to be completely white just there. The one just above it, that's going to be 75% opaque. So I'm going to type 75 just there, or 25% transparent, whichever way you want to look at it. This one's going to be 50%. You can see what I'm doing here, right? Stepping it back. And this one is going to be 25. There we go. So it kind of fades in because Adobelive does that. Kind of fades in, then boom, suddenly you're in like, ooh, learning zone. Groovy. Right, let's go ahead and do that. Quick save just to update that. So those are all in the right place. I'm going to select the word Adobe at the back here now, the one that we split up, and I'm going to change the color of that. Nice, easy operation because, of course, that's a group. I'm going to tap M, and then I'm going to go up to the top here and draw right the way across. There we go, like so. So I'm making the bleed on both sides. I'm going to send that to the back, see what it looks like. Amber, don't like it. So I'm just going to hit slash because that's the fill, and then Shift X to swap those over. And then we're in that kind of territory. That's nice, I think. That's working pretty well. Let's have a quick save and a preview of that. So we're not too far off now, Kieran. I've just got a few adjustments I think I'd like to make, and really we should have a bit of strapline text across the bottom, so we can do that from there. So let's grab these. Now would be a good time, I guess, if you want to ask me about the whole why is V the shortcut thing. If you wanted to throw that in, I don't mind. I can tell you. Yeah. Oh, I can't hear you all of a sudden. Let me just see what I've done there.
No, that was me being very silly. I put on mute. There we go. No, I said that.
Oh, no. I do that as a
thinking.
host. I do that as a host all the time, and I've forgotten before and got like, oh, blah.
It's so you don't hear my coughing in the live stream.
Same. We're good. Right. Anyway, so
yeah,
I'm just gonna move a few of these little bits around here because now I've got all of the ensemble there. I want to just mess with those a little bit and get them to where I want to be, and that's kind of where I want them to be. So why is it V for the shortcut? Well, back in the day, right, before computers, and in fact, when I started in this industry, this is exactly then, you'd work in paste up. So you'd glue everything to a board. That board would then be photographed and you'd make your print plates from it. And the tool of choice, I can actually draw one here, I think, or I can draw something very, very similar to it. Right. So this is me drawing a scalpel blade live on Adobe Live. Would be a 10A scalpel blade that looked a little bit like that. Okay. And because that was what page layout artists used to use to put things together, the closest shape to that is a V. And that is, honest to God, why it's V.
Interesting.
Because
dude, my mind is blown from that.
And take it over. There you go. I'm full of InDesign pub quiz knowledge, man.
I'm taking you to the pub with me. There's any pubs that come up. You're on my team, buddy. That's for sure.
Oh dear. Oh,
I love that. That's a cool fact. That's
there you go.
Cool fact to know. Yeah.
We are pretty much there, I think. I don't think there's anything I want to add particularly to that at the moment, apart from, well, we could put that text at the bottom, although I've got no real text to put here, so I'm just going to drag a text. Yeah, we'll do that.
We love a bit of Lauren Epsom, man.
Yeah, we do. Now, actually, I'm going to go for another version of Lato just here. Right, I'm going to go right the way down. I wouldn't go to anything light or anything because this is reversing out from the page. That's never a good idea to do that. But I think I'm going to go semi-bold just there. I'm just going to change that to anything other than 12 because I'm not writing a letter to my nan. Yeah. Just brilliant. To increase that, or actually it might help if I actually had that targeted just there. I'm just going to make that maybe 16, 17, 18, 9, 20, turning. I'll stop at 20. 20 points just there.
Yeah.
Here's a tip for you. Not everything we do, right, when we are, so if I fill this with placeholder text, we get lorem ipsum, right? And here, if I just select all of that and change the color to white, just there like so we can see it. Let's zoom in on that a little bit. Just there. I've actually got some overspill content, so it started me a new line, I think. Right. But anyway, doesn't matter, just for the time being. Not everything we do needs to be kind of read as Latin or English. Sometimes you might be using a different language or a different alphabet, right? Here's the thing. Okay. They do exist inside of InDesign, and to access them, okay, if I go back to oh man, this is am I in the type menu? I'm in the right. Fill with placeholder text. Hold down Command on a Mac, Control on Windows, and it will open you this placeholder text options.
Dude, I did not know
and
that,
from
actually.
here, you can access placeholder text in all of these other alphabets and languages.
Okay. I did not know that, and I'm using the Mac for a long time.
That's cool. Super useful.
That's very cool. Guys, I hope you're taking notes of these gems because, I mean, I'm definitely going to rewatch this to find out myself, but that's a really cool fact. That's a really
It's
cool
a
fact,
useful thing to have, right? Because, useful. You know, we don't always do things exactly the same way. I'm just going to hit the escape key here and just have a look. I'm going to purposely overfill this, you know, so I'm going to just add in some more placeholder text. I'm just going to carry on with lorem ipsum. It's being a bit stingy with the placeholder text, I've got to be honest. Oh, come on.
I'll
Add
say,
me a bit
Tony, as well,
more.
time is literally, and I feel like I could easily do another hour of like just watching this flow, because, and I want to know more tips, but I feel like people are going to have to reach out. But I also want to make sure that we get a chance to find out about more about
Close
how we
out
can.
properly.
Exactly, yeah, because we don't have that
Yeah,
final rush. But maybe I could do like an overview of what we've seen, and then maybe like how people can reach out.
we can. In fact, that's
Yeah,
all fine for now. I'm not going to add in
yeah,
another tip just there at this stage. So I'll just review
cool.
what we did just here. Okay, so we use the PathFinder a lot to make shapes from other shapes, to cut this text initially in half, and we showed how you could use the reference point and the controls to actually flip things over, so you've got copies of them. We use that for the diamonds also. We've learned how to make gradients. We've learned how to add swatches for radial and linear gradients. We've used opacity in the text here. Okay, we've created shapes using a number of different things. We use the convert to shape from the PathFinder panel just there. We've created a vector shape from an image. So we brought that in. We used the small bit of capture, Adobe Capture, that's built into InDesign to create that and add that to our library. We also locked that, okay, using a shortcut. And then we saw how we could create a 1-bit TIFF to bring in a texture and colorize that directly inside of InDesign, and how we could also convert any shape to another type, so to a text box or to a graphics frame, which is what we did just there. And I think in a nutshell, that's about the stacking order. We did that
great.
through the layers.
That's something I can see through the chat. I mean, everyone has absolutely enjoyed, including myself, the gems, everything you said. And by all means, guys, please do follow up with Tony. I can see the links are in the chat. And just to round up for you guys, stay tuned. We've got Ari and Ben in a new episode of Adobe Fonts. Variable fonts have arrived. Awesome things. And there you can walk through some new features and learn how to use variable fonts to create more custom designs. And of course, get those questions because they'll be answered too. Tony, my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure, buddy, to host you.
I've loved it.
Yeah,
I hope we get to do this again, man.
I very much hope so. We do. We will.
Yeah.
And again, for you guys as well in the chat, thank you for joining. Your comments have been great. And of course, the Adobelive team. So we'll see you guys very, very soon, and take care and be safe. See you guys.
Take care, everyone. Bye.